Who are we? Well, I'm Bernie. I'm a retired senior executive from the trucking transportation industry, former classmate of my partner in crime, Dick. And we hope to provide a senior perspective to people of all ages on the current events of the day, and also some anecdotal stuff and some humor, I hope.
Okay, I'm Dick. I'm 74. I'm a retired military officer. After leaving the military, I taught high school for 15 years, basically psychology, and I'm not happy the way the world is going. Hey, Burns, what'd you do over the holidays?
Well, I thought about you, Dick, with loving feelings.
Oh, so nice.
No, we talk once a week. Our viewers may not know that, but long before we started these podcasts, we've always talked every Friday, and I look forward to it. And my goal each week is to live long enough that I can see you on Friday.
All right. Well, that's great. So,
Well, if you want me to kick this thing off, and at the risk of sounding negative, we just had our 4th of July holiday. What traditionally is, American patriotism on display and firework shows and family get-togethers. And the thing I noticed most was that we had 400 shootings over the 4th of July weekend in this country, and 150 resulted in deaths. And anybody who knows me knows this. I'm not going to segue into gun confiscation. I'm a believer in the Second Amendment. But what I will say, though, is what in the hell has happened to America when, when we celebrate the founding of this country and our independence, and it's always a fun time. Now it's a bloodbath.
well, we were talking earlier. In Hawaii, there never used to be any gun-related anything. I mean, robberies were ripped off. We didn't have the beatings and everything. Now we get 2 or 3 shootings a week. And I just don't, well, A, I don't understand, but number 2, what the hell changed? When I was a kid growing up, 74 years ago, we never even locked our front door. I mean, there were no shootings, there were no nothing. What the hell is happening?
Yeah, I think that was an extra. If you bought a house, you had to pay a premium to have locks put on the doors. I mean, I'm being facetious, but I hear what you're saying. And we talked a little bit about this before. You and I grew up in the 50s, early 60s. Our childhoods were in the 50s. And, we'd play ball in the streets or ride our bikes to God knows where. And you grew up in Minnesota, me in Michigan. In the winter, we'd have our snowball fights and build snow forts and, do our sledding, tobogganing. And we'd be out all day into the early evening, waiting, for our mothers to yell at us for dinner. But I feel for kids today with the crap that goes on in America, the drive-by shootings, the mothers anymore, if you avoid driving down a street that an elementary school is on because all the cars are backed up, parents, and I believe it's not because of distance to the schools, but out of fear for their children, are now habitually picking them up, dropping them off, picking them up, dropping them off, or, they're riding school buses, but they just, everybody's on guard. And it never used to be that way. I don't remember, and I didn't come from a wealthy family. I think we were solid middle class, 4 kids. Dad worked, mom was a homemaker. But I don't remember these kind of issues. I don't remember, opening up the newspaper and instead of looking at the sports page or the funnies, you'd read about murders 3 blocks away. It just didn't happen.
Why did it happen?
You mean, why has it changed?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, Dick. I think somehow, some way, the political parties have changed. I think that's one of the keys we have, and I want to repeat, because I've said this on other podcasts, I'm a conservative and an independent. There are Republicans I like, but I'm not a member of the Republican Party. I think there are things the Republican Party is remiss in not doing. But, let's harken back to Kennedy versus Nixon and the debates. And I think, I could make a case for voting for Nixon, and I could make a case for voting for Kennedy. And whichever way the country went in that 1960 election, had it been Nixon over Kennedy, I wouldn't have had an issue with that. And the fact that it was Kennedy, I didn't have an issue. Now, yeah, I was young then, but they were both remarkable politicians and educated men in their own right. And each, although they had different prescriptions for the country, loved their country. And nowadays, all it is locking horns, and nothing gets done, and there are no solutions. I mean, think about the Congress today and this infrastructure bill. If this particular Congress had been around 150 years ago, I mean, I don't think we'd have roads or bridges. They get nothing done but investigations. And I particularly aim that comment at the Democrats. And I want to give you time to talk, Dick, but I get passionate about this.
Well,
When you go an entire summer, as we did last year, with the BLM and Antifa rioting and the defunding of the police protests that got out of hand, and the looting and the burning, all the chaos, and literally nothing was done. And nothing was done predominantly by Democratic governors and Democratic mayors, and that has now transitioned to a Democratic president. I don't remember that happening. I don't remember, other than his politics were more liberal than somebody else. I don't remember an Adlai Stevenson, Hubert Humphrey, Bill Moyers, Henry Scoop Jackson. I'm just thinking of some Democrats that, I remember as a boy, young man. I mean, they weren't anathema to me. They just had a different point of view. But on a lot of things, by the way, I said Bill Moyers, I meant to say William Fulbright. Everett Dirksen. I mean, these were good, solid citizens. But don't you think that's changed now, Dick? It's like we're arch enemies. We're fighting another revolution.
yes, but my question still remains, What's the big change? What happened?
Well, there certainly seems to be a lack of respect for the principles of law and order. I think God has been taken out of the classroom, and there's the religious the religious foundation of our country is not as strong as it used to be, particularly on the East and West Coast, the blue states. We have the advent of the teachers' unions. They're more hell-bent on either not working or devoting themselves to critical race theory than teaching the 3 R's and helping in the classroom do what parents are supposed to do in the home. The advent of mothers having to work, not so much from choice. I get a kick out of, the Democrats want choice on abortion, but you're not allowed choice on whether you get a COVID vaccination. And you certainly don't get a choice on if you want to stay at home and be a homemaker and be a mother raising her kids, because it's hard to make a go of it today, but particularly for young couples without both parents working. That's
Well, yeah, here in Hawaii, we just passed the median price of a home at 1 million. And I don't understand how anybody can buy a house now. But switching gears back to what I was saying is, okay, we know what's happened. How do you recommend we reverse it? Get back to the way it was. Get back to the 50s, maybe. Get back to the Eisenhower years. Is it even possible?
I don't know. I'm not real optimistic about it. I mean, I'm 74, and there are some days I think to myself, it's a good time to check out, because I love this country and I don't like the direction it's taken. I think Trump, for all of his personal faults and attributes, was a good president in terms of putting his finger in the dike. And for 4 years, although the Democrats went crazy and the media went crazy, nonetheless, the military did get rebuilt. And things important, but I believe him to have been a law and order president. But we're right back in the downward spiral. And I read this past week a column, and one sentence in this essay just jumped off the page, and really it almost hurt reading it, and it hurt because it was so truthful. We've literally, from the time we grew up, we were both born in 1947, and again, our childhoods were the 50s and early 60s. But there have been 2 succeeding generations now that in many ways, shapes, and forms have been accustomed to seeing America on the decline. And I don't know whether it's acceptance or apathy. I mean, when I think of your question, it's it's not even a 2-front war. It's not the liberals and it's not the media, as a lot of people think. I mean, how about the woke multinational corporations and their behavior now? I mean, even a company like Disney that was venerated when we were kids, the Musketeer Club, and going to see Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, that type of thing, that we lived for. I mean, now they're coming up with, we got to use the correct pronouns in our theme parks. And we have to, cater to, different kinds of behaviors. And I think of Coca-Cola. I mean, if that's not an institution in America, I know it's a worldwide corporation and the product is distributed worldwide, but I mean, to me, Coca-Cola is America. And they came out with an anti-white campaign as part of their wokeness. Now that thing has backfired on them, thank God. But what a thing to do in this country. So when you ask me how do we change things, reverse engines, get back to where we were, there are so many fronts we're facing now. We've got the corporations, we've got the media, we've got the educational system, both K through 12 and the colleges, universities. What am I missing? Because I'm sitting here kind of getting angry. and I'm not, I'm sure I'm missing out on a few, but it just seems like the attack on our traditions, our values, our founding, our culture is coming from so many directions now. And of course, big tech is literally going after conservatives with censorship and a denial of our Bill of Rights, our right to speak freely. How do you get back to a time in our country that was so much better than it is today, if you can't even, from a conservative point of view, talk about tradition without getting hamstrung, without, being gagged, so to speak, from saying what we'd like to say. I mean, parents right now who are doing what we've suggested in several podcasts, Dick, taking on the school boards over critical race theory, are being arrested and pilloried in their communities. Because God forbid they try to protect their children, and what the curriculum is doing when it gets beyond teaching as we used to know it, and now is a propaganda mill for leftist causes. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer.
Yeah, but how did this change happen?
Dick, I've tried to, I'm not certain. God, I think back on, remember Firing Line with William F. Buckley?
Yes.
Remember he used to debate from time to time Gore Vidal?
Yes.
Author and an ardent liberal?
Yes.
Those were civilized discussions. And for me, they were fun to watch. And Vidal got his points made, as did Buckley with that wry grin of his, but they were gentlemen about it. And today, people on the right and on the left are savaged in print. They're savaged on cable news. It's what it is, Dick. I think it's a damn shame. And, when the adults feel this way, imagine what the young kids feel like. I mean, they're literally being prepared to take up the cause of radical liberalism, I believe. And if you lose the youngsters, you're losing yet another generation.
Okay, so how do we fix it?
Dick, you got it. What? I'll turn it back on you. What do you think? Because I'm not coming up with much in the way of an optimistic view.
Okay, I'll take it. I
Okay.
think it's a result of how people are being educated today. And I think that if the parents don't get involved, their kids are basically going to be brainwashed. In other words, they're told the way the world is, as opposed to experiencing the way the world is. And their teachers say, you know, the sky is green, then the sky is green. And it's unfortunate, but that seems the way it is. A lot of things that used to be taught, for example, social studies, history, etc. A lot of those things aren't taught anymore. So kids don't have a clue. They don't know who Ronald Reagan is. They don't know who Pope John was. They figure World War II was the battle against the Brits by the Americans. I mean, they do not have a clue. So how do we fix it? First of all, parents, I think, need to get involved in education. And they need to make sure that their kids are getting the type of education they, the parents, want, not what the community wants. You know, the old, it takes a community to raise a child. I mean, that's socialistic. Let's just clone them. And I think if we change that, we might get somewhere. If nothing else, we'll end up with kids that respect their parents, understand their parents, and have, you know, reasonable critical thinking point of view. See, that's another problem. Nobody critically thinks anymore. You're taught that this is the answer instead of being taught what other answers are there. Is this the right answer? The wrong answer? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the benefits? And, you know, nobody does cost benefit analysis, you know, anymore. I know I rambled, but that to me is the answer. If parents do not get involved, they're going to get the type of kids that they don't like. And that's unfortunate, but they didn't partake in it.
One thing I've often said on my Facebook page, which is pretty much, you know, aimed at my conservative politics.
Yeah, right. It's right wing.
Okay, Dick, I won't bite.
Well, the vegans don't like it.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking, and one of the prescriptions I often cite is voters have to be smarter, more informed voters. But what I haven't said, but I'm thinking now is, I don't know that that in and of itself is the prescription if we keep getting bad candidates. Because even as a conservative, I'm the first to say that oftentimes on a ticket, there are things about the Republican candidate that don't beg a vote any more than the liberal Democratic candidate. It's oftentimes, and unfortunately so, the lesser of two evils. And all you have to do is look at what happens in the Congress. I mean, John Cornyn, I've talked about it before, our senior senator here in Texas, is working across the aisle with the Democrats on a broad stroke amnesty plan for some 20 to 24 million illegal aliens in this country. I mean, would I want to vote for that guy as a candidate over somebody else? No. I don't see anything redeeming in that. He may be a nice man, but he's not the kind of politician I would want. I remember John F. Kennedy, when you and I were young, talking about politics as a noble cause. and encouraging young people to get into politics. And today, I'd go so far as to say, with but few exceptions, it's a sordid business. And the big money interests, no matter what the politician, left or right, may be saying, it's still the big money interests that are funding the campaigns and afterwards dictating terms and conditions. And a guy like George Soros comes to mind. I mean, to me, he ought to be public enemy number one in this country for what he's done.
Well, it's interesting because I was talking to a person that's applying for citizenship. And first of all, the question was, why are you applying? You're already a citizen of two countries. And they go, well, you know, the green card application program every 10 years costs me a lot of money and it's a hassle. I said, well, that's an interesting reason to become a citizen. But I said, what do we, the American public, get from you becoming a citizen? And what are you value added? The question was never answered.
Well, I like what you just said.
Never answered. You know, I have no problem with the brain surgeon, and I believe Pennsylvania, who's illegal and they want to deport him, and he's the top brain surgeon in the country. I have no problem with keeping people like that in the country. I have no problem with immigration over history, where we brought in people who contributed. But a lot of the people coming in today, you know, just to answer my question, what do I get out of you coming in? I mean, I don't know, you want to come in, you want this, you want that. Well, I want value added. What's your value added?
Well, I'll give you an extreme example of the point you're making. You know, I'm saying this obviously in a sardonic way, but why under the Biden administration do we want MS-13 in this country? What value do we get out of a bunch of murderers? I mean, who in their right mind would open the floodgates and let Latin American, South American gangs into this country? Who would allow the drug cartels, the Mexican drug cartels, to control our southern border? Who in their right mind would do that? And that's part of the problem, is that some of the things that are happening in this country now are so antithetical to what happened in the 50s. And the 50s wasn't perfect, not suggesting that for a minute. But, you know, the country wasn't hell-bent on killing babies in the womb in the 50s. And the country believed in law and order in the 50s. And while the Democrats and the Republicans had different prescriptions for what could improve the country, they weren't at each other's throats. There were some instances of that, but for the most part, there seemed to be a reasonable decorum, and things happened. But it's all gone to hell in a handbasket, to use a phrase my mom used to use. And you mentioned families and the parents, plural, need to do this and that, Dick. Well, you're right. But we all know in the Black community, all we have to listen to is NFL, NBA, MLB, you name it, a Black sports star being interviewed after, you know, he or she wins a game or wins the championship. And it's always, I want to thank my mama, because that's who they grew up with. They grew up with a mother. A father had abandoned the family at an early age, and there might have been 6, 7, 8 kids. And mother had to do a couple jobs. And there's more of that. I mean, I'm not taking aim at the Black community, but it seems like the Democrats don't want to treat the root cause issues in the Black community to help the Black community. They just want their votes, and every 4 years they get all excited about garnering Black votes, and then they go to sleep on them. But the divorce rate in the country now, I think, is somewhere around 60%. I mean, if I miss it by a few points, I don't miss it by much. One of the reason, and I'm Catholic, but one of the reason you have Catholic leaders down on the southern border defying our federal laws hand in hand with the Democrats and encouraging illegal immigration is because they can't fill their churches with American citizens. So they're trying to rebuild their Sunday collection plates with illegal aliens.
And with that, we're out of time.
Whoa, we ended that on a positive note, didn't we, Dick?
Yeah, so let's get ready for next week.
Okay.